Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sincerely Strangers. I am your host, Jack, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Hilary
Hi.
and Morgan.
Hi.
And we have something a little bit different for you planned today. Now, as we all know, the holidays are coming up. Christmas is just around the corner, and everybody's getting ready to spread holiday cheer and joy wherever they are with their families, if that's possible for you. And we decided to do something that has kind of been phased out of existence after a while, but there used to be a tradition every Christmas of telling scary stories, which seems a little bit weird considering what Christmas is, but believe it or not, it was true. So we decided to have a Nightmare Before Christmas episode where we're going to be going around sharing one of our favorite stories. Scary, could be true crime, could be monsters, could be some a YouTube story from like horror narrators or anything like that of that vein. And then after that, we will be discussing all things supernatural. Since we did miss a Halloween episode, we will be discussing all things supernatural, what we believe in personally, and things that we have seen. So if anybody else would like to go first, or I could go first.
I think you can start this off, Jack.
Okay. All right. Here, let me get my narration voice up. All right. So this one is a story that is supposedly based on true events. However, I would take that with the heaviest grain of salt. And it's called Violin Hill. And this story is essentially about a person moving into a new house with basically nothing else around it because it's a new development. And they hear a violin being played on a nearby abandoned lot. And after they see the person playing the violin, strange things start to happen around their house. So, all right. Around 2 years ago, I finally moved into a brand new house in a brand new building estate in Australia. I was one of the first to have a finished build in the area and was elated to finally gain independence. The first few weeks went by as normal, and during that time, I'd often take walks alone with the dog in the afternoons and roam the surrounding estate area. All the roads around us had been partially completed, and all the other properties were marked out, but no other houses were built, excluding the one that was directly opposite mine. The house looked finished, but there was no driveway laid yet, and from what I could gather, no one lives there. To the left of my house, roughly a few hundred meters away, was a field with a huge hill on it. I later found out that the whole area was council property. Not only was no one allowed to build up there, but for whatever reason, the hill was basically a no-go zone. The council just didn't want people on it for some reason, so the whole area was surrounded by a huge chain-link fence. The only other noticeable feature in the area was a small abandoned farmhouse with a shed a few kilometers down the road. I knew nothing about it and often went walking there with the dog as it gave me something mild to explore among the vast nothingness I was living around. The entire place was dilapidated and completely uninhabitable, but it was interesting nonetheless. About a month or two after moving in, I awoke one morning to the sound of a violin. It sounded extremely distant and quite haunting. I actually enjoyed it and assumed that the neighbors opposite me had finally moved in. Excited that I finally had some people to talk to, I peeked out the curtain and saw the house opposite mine was still as vacant as it ever was. I got dressed, but by the time I managed to look outside, the violin had stopped. This happened roughly every second day for the next week. The violin would wake me up and then just disappear after about 45 seconds. I'd ignored it to the point where my curiosity simply got the better of me. And the next morning when I heard the violin playing, I immediately jumped out of bed, threw on my dressing gown, and shot out the front door. I scoured the early morning surroundings, and there, up on the hill, was a figure playing a violin. It was barely light, but the person looked very tall from the distance I was at. And as they were playing, was doing what could only be described as a waltz-type walk, spinning slowly around in a circle as they played. I took my eyes off the person and walked over to pick up the morning paper, and in the 10 seconds that took me, I heard the violin stop. When I looked up, I noticed the figure was no longer playing or dancing, but was now standing still and most likely looking in my direction. It was so dark I couldn't make out any more, and we both just stood there for half a minute, not moving, before the creeps got the better of me and I went back inside. After that morning, things started happening. On my walks, I began to notice footprints on the surrounding properties that weren't made by me and that I'd never seen before, which I just assumed were from people walking up from the other housing areas down the road. I never awoke to the violin, but I swore I could hear someone walking on the street next to my bedroom window in the early mornings. However, I never saw anything. Other really general things as well, like random tools such as spades and rakes laying around the area, which I guessed were left there by construction crews, none of which I ever saw. I started getting calls at work that would immediately hang up on me, and I also stopped walking to the abandoned farmhouse, as the experience with the violin player had me a little shaken. One night, as I was heading to bed, I turned off the television in the living room, and again, could hear the faint sound of a violin playing. However, it sounded more muffled than rehearsed. I froze, and a cold chill flowed through me instantaneously. Considering that it was about midnight and not the usual time I'd hear it playing, I went to a front window and peeked out to see that there was a light in the house opposite mine. It was clearly a candle, as I could see the dim light flicker in the empty window, and the music sounded like it was coming from an old record player. But in the 10 seconds I watched, I never saw any movement inside the house. I moved away from the window, sufficiently freaked out, and after another 5 minutes, I heard the music abruptly stop. I peeked out again to notice the light was now out. I never saw anyone. I began to become unsettled in the house and would often invite friends over to hang out until late, but of course, nothing would ever happen when someone else was with me. I never bothered to tell any of my friends, as without evidence, I figured they'd just give me grief about it. I'd just become more agitated. But nothing compared to what happened next. In my living area, the desk sits right next to a small window which looks out to the fence surrounding my property. The steel fence is literally an arm's length away from that house and about 6 feet tall, so I always figured that, unlike most of the other windows, I'd never need to cover this one with a sheet or blanket because no one could ever see in. I usually had headphones on when I played, and I always had the lights off for no other reason than I preferred to play games in the dark. One night when I was gaming, I got up and walked into the dark kitchen and got a beer out of the fridge. It was dead silent, excluding the faint sound coming out of my headphones. As I closed the fridge and turned around to face the desk, I saw directly out the window two very, very faint lights. I didn't even catch on and immediately started walking back to the desk, fixated on the small glowing balls. And it wasn't until I had my nose almost pressed against the glass that I realized the two lights weren't lights at all. They were eyes. A set of eyes sitting just above the fence line, staring wide open at me. They didn't blink, they didn't move. My entire body locked up. All I could do was simply stare back as my brain was still comprehending that there was an actual person looking at me in the scariest way I could possibly even imagine. I don't know what happened. Either my head kicked into gear or my muscles loosened, but my body automatically collapsed and I fell to the floor, scurrying away against the wall to hide away from the window. I could hear my heart beating through the carpet like a drum as I tried to lay as flat as possible. And as my mind was still processing the sheer severity of the situation, a violin started playing. That damn violin and the haunting tune it always emitted starting up, except this time it was directly outside my window and much louder than I'd ever heard it before. The lights were still off, and I wanted to get up to turn off the PC screen so I couldn't be seen, but my whole body just wasn't ready to cooperate. Not only was the sound of the instrument extraordinarily loud, but it sounded like it had been played with frustration, notes being missed frequently and the strings screeching. The pace of it was getting faster and faster, and by this time, my dog Jeb out in the backyard had picked up on the situation and, registering an unfamiliar sound, gave one solitary deep bark. The violin instantly stopped, and the house was finally dead silent, excluding my headphones, which I could hear quietly working away. I was still frozen to the carpet, and it wasn't until Jeb gave a second menacing bark that I heard the figure outside my window start to walk away in the direction of my yard. Once that first footstep hit the ground, I instantly thought of the welfare of my best friend, and finally, my head connected with my extremities, and my entire body kicked into overdrive. I left from the ground and slid across the laminated floor to the back door, where Jeb was standing, staring into the backyard. I ducked to keep low and quietly unlocked and slid open the door. Usually doing so would notify Jeb that he was allowed inside, but when the door opened, he didn't move an inch and was completely fixated on the pitch black backyard. Everything told me not to go outside, but there was no chance I was letting anything happen to my dog, and I moved out onto the alfresco, moved behind Jeb, put my hand under his collar, and attempted to back him toward the house. Jeb is a pure Labrador and weighs like a sack of sand, so when he doesn't want to move, it takes a sheer force to pull him in the direction you want him to go, and right now, Jeb wasn't going anywhere. I yanked at his scruff, and as I did, he emitted a bark like I'd never heard before, a deep, bellowing screw-off sound that elevated my nerves to an all-time high. We both just stood there, waiting for some form of reply, and I couldn't remember how long we both just froze there. But eventually, I heard footsteps from around the side of the house begin to walk away. But not a simple walk, almost like whoever was doing it was slowly dancing in a circle. the footsteps keeping to a beat as they drifted away from the house into the distance. Once I couldn't hear anything, Jeb licked his lips, gave me a look, and wandered back inside. I followed, locked the door behind me, and spent the night reverting to my childlike self, hiding under my bed covers with my dog. I didn't sleep a wink. That was the last time I ever saw or heard the violin player. The following morning, when the sun finally came up, I called into work sick and called the police. They scoured the lot next to mine and found footprints in the dirt. However, there were so many that it was impossible to tell whose were whose. The only description I could give to the officer was his height. He would have had to be over 6 foot to stare over that fence at me, but they explained that he could have been standing on something or on his toes. They also told me that they've never received a report of anyone playing a violin in the area or anyone being in that fenced off hill either. I essentially looked like an insane person, but the officers were very nice about the whole thing and offered to patrol the area for the next few nights, which helped put my mind at ease. Nothing else has happened since then. Over the next year or two, people finally started moving in, and I tell them all the story about the figure I saw, some of which still use it to keep their children in line, which I found funny. One guy nicknamed the council lot Violin Hill, and the name has stuck around our streets since then. I even spent a period of time scouring the depths of the internet for that violin tune I kept hearing, but could never find it. There were a few classical pieces that seemed reminiscent, but I've since thought that whatever tune was played must have been self-composed, which creeps me out even more. I'm still in the house, I still tell the story, and I haven't changed my routine one bit, which has really helped me to block out the fear of the experience. I game with the blinds closed now. The end.
Oh, oh God. Would you still stay in the house if like that happened to you? Like, wouldn't you just move away?
That sounds like the coolest story ever. Are you kidding? I would tell that to literally everybody I know.
Hell no.
Obviously,
Oh my
I'm
God.
staying in the house. You never came back, so like,
Well,
whatever.
okay,
you
but
never
I
know.
what I don't get with those stories is that like, why don't you just call the police immediately? Why do they wait? And they're just like, it's fine. It's like, call the police
I mean,
immediately.
what is there to call the police about? What is there to call the
No,
police
like
about? It's
about
somebody
like,
not on your property.
okay, but he literally he called the police in the morning. Why didn't he call the police that night? It's so
I
weird.
don't know.
Like
I
I
don't
hear
know
these
what I would
stories and
do
I'm
in that
so frustrated.
situation.
He went to bed with his dog. I'm like, there's someone in my house. Like the
There's someone outside that's gone. Like, I don't know.
yeah, and then he calls
I
the
don't know
police in
what
the
I would do.
morning last night. There was a guy who just came to my house and I decided to sleep it off and then call.
Morgan is like, great.
I just don't get it.
All right.
I don't know, man.
I always get like so frustrated sometimes because I listen to a lot of scary stories and it's always like there's always the person who's just like, oh, the police don't need to know, and then like last minute they decide to call and I'm like, well now like all the evidence is gone, so thank you.
People are stupider than you think, Morgan. People are stupider than you would think. Looking right now, you're like, oh, just call the police immediately. But like, if you're in that situation, you might be like, I need to sleep. I cannot be here anymore. Please take me away from this. And just like, go sleep. I don't know. Perhaps. I don't know.
I gotta be too
All right.
scared. Just
You know,
Exactly.
someone was just
Morgan.
dancing around my yard playing the violin, terrorizing me for a long period of time, and he shows up, and I just took my dog and went to. I would be terrified to sleep.
yeah, I wouldn't be able to sleep. But you know what? That part of him, like, not leaving his dog in the backyard, that was cute. I was like, yes, yes. That was the part that invoked the most emotion in me, okay?
I figured it would.
Yeah, that was...
All right, so that was mine. It kind of gives the general vibe. All right, so who wants to go next? Hilary, you want to go next?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, I'm excited. But as a fair warning, this is I chose a true crime story from Hong Kong in the 1980s, and it does contain some gore. So if you get uncomfortable with that, and we definitely don't want to make anyone uncomfortable on this show, feel free to skip this story.
We will include in the YouTube description a timestamp past this story so you can listen to the rest of it.
Yeah,
So
I'll probably
don't
do
worry
a
about that.
voiceover afterwards.
Right.
So for those of you who are listening on Spotify, insert voiceover here.
Hi guys, this is your trigger warning for the upcoming story. It may contain some gore and violence for people who are uncomfortable with it, so if you would not like to listen to the story, please kindly skip to 2551. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Alright, now that that's done, I need to... Okay. I don't know why I'm so nervous. It's not like I'm giving a presentation. Okay, so this case has been dubbed the Braemar Hill Double Murders, and it's known as one of Hong Kong's top 10 most gruesome murders to date. On the morning of April 21st, 1985, a jogger by the name of Mr. Lin was taking his daily run past the Braemar Mountain Service Reservoir when he noticed a boy in jeans laying on the grass on a steep slope. He found the scene to be peculiar at first, but disregarded it and continued running up the hill. After about an hour, Mr. Lin was heading back down the hill and notices that the boy's body had not moved at all, and walks toward the boy. Mr. Lin shockingly notices that the boy's hands were tied behind his back, and at a distance tries to call out to the boy, checking to see if he's okay. There was no response. He tries to inch closer and notices that the boy is a foreigner. When he moved closer, he could now see the horrifying state the body was in. The boy's eyes were half open, his tongue was stretched out, and his face was beaten so badly and covered in blood that it was nearly unrecognizable. At the realization that the boy was already dead, Mr. Lin screamed and ran frantically downhill and called the police from a telephone in a small shop. The police immediately rushed to Braemar Hill, which was a nice neighborhood and home to many foreigners. With the help of Mr. Lin, the boy's body was quickly located. Following an autopsy, the boy's cause of death would be determined to be by strangulation. According to the autopsy, the boy was beaten by a wooden stick at least 100 times, and the beatings must have lasted for at least 30 minutes before his death. The boy was strangled by his bandage that was his arm sling for his fractured collarbone. The boy was beaten so severely that his healing collarbone had been refractured and internal organs were injured. The autopsy reported that there had to be at least 2 people responsible for the boy's death, but based on the chaotic footprints found on the scene, the police ruled the number to be around 3. The boy was later identified to be 17-year-old Kenneth McBride by his collarbone fracture and calls the police had received the night prior to the discovery of the body, stating that Kenneth was missing. Kenneth had reportedly gone out with his girlfriend, 18-year-old Nicola Myers, to Braemar Hill on a walk. So the police continued searching around Braemar Hill for Nicola, and 200 to 300 meters away, there was Nicola's body lying lifelessly in the grass. Nicola's body was found half naked, torn up with more than 500 injuries, a shattered jaw, and an empty eye socket, with the eye nowhere to be found. I will not be going into detail about the circumstances of Nicola's death, because it definitely may be too uncomfortable for some listeners, but it is worth mentioning that Nicole was tortured for 2 more hours after her boyfriend's death, and was alive when the killers left the scene. Due to the extremely brutal nature of the crime and the fact that 2 Westerners were the victims, the Royal Hong Kong Police Force spent an enormous amount of resources in trying to solve this case. And keep in mind, in 1985, Hong Kong was still under British rule, so having foreigners killed was a really big deal to the police. The case immediately became the most talked about topic in Hong Kong. It was rare for foreigners to be attacked, much less on Braemar Hill. The police gathered over 800 officers to work on this case, and interviewed nearly 10,000 locals to attempt to gather any evidence they could find. Forensic evidence found on the scene of the murder was inconclusive, as forensic science had not been a highly developed subject at the time. The fluids on the victims' bodies and textbooks and the fingerprints on the wooden sticks believed to be the weapons of the killers were of no use at all. Even after tremendous efforts of the police, no useful tips or evidence was gathered to help further the investigation. Many police officers thought that the motive for the murders must have been a personal vendetta for the crime to be so horrendous, although the victim's belongings were missing from the scene. An interesting police statement taken from an elderly woman was, however, given some interesting attention after this matter. An elderly man had called the police to report that his wife had been acting weird, which he thought was because of the murders of Kenneth and Nicola. The elderly man reported that his wife, who has never known English, had been saying phrases in English after seeing news reports of the murders. The police immediately went to their home, and upon entering, the elderly woman grabbed an officer and stood up, stating in perfect English and a different voice, "Please, help me." This immediately freaked the police officers out, and they had a psychologist conduct hypnosis on the elderly woman to see what they could find. The elderly woman started speaking fluent English in a voice that was not her own, and started to plead with the officers to find the killers for her. Although her statement didn't help the police in their investigation, many believed that Nicola's ghost was trying to communicate with the officers to help convict the killers. The investigation went on for about half a month, and police were under tremendous pressure to catch the culprits. The police issued out $50,000 as Hong Kong dollars as a reward for anyone with clues or anything that could help the investigation. A hotline was also provided for citizens to provide clues, and the police investigated an additional 20,000 locals for information, with no success. After 6 months, Kenneth and Nicole's parents both transported their bodies back to Britain for burial. Ken's father, a senior employee of a British company in Hong Kong, was highly regarded by the boss as a hard worker and an expert in what he does. And as a result, the company offered 550,000 Hong Kong dollars as a reward for anyone who had any tips for the police to convince Kenneth's dad to stay in Hong Kong and not resign from the company. A few days after the reward was issued, the Organized Crime and Triad Investigation Division received a call from a small leader in the gang, Fu Yixing. The leader reported that a member of his gang, 24-year-old Pang Seng-yi, had been boasting about killing a foreigner. Pang had also been boasting about the Nike shoes he took from his victim, which were high-end shoes that would have cost him a month's worth of his salary. On November 27, 1985, Pang Seng-yi had finally been identified as the murderer of Kenneth McBride and Nicola Myers. Police searched Pang's home and found Kenneth's sneakers, and also found out that Pang had tried to sell a gold watch a few months ago, which was also identified as Kenneth's. Pang denied any involvement in the murders at first, but after being presented with the evidence, admitted being related to the case, but denied being the leader of the murders. Pang also named the 4 other boys that were with him on the day of the murder: 20-year-old Tem Si-foon, 25-year-old Chu Wai-man, 17-year-old Chang Yao-hang, and 16-year-old Wan Sung-lam. They arrested all 4 of the boys in the same day. None of the 5 people admitted to being the one to start the murder, so the police turned to the minors. The police told 16-year-old Wan that they would be convicted based on the evidence even if they denied it, and offered the possibility of leniency in law because he was a minor. Wan pleaded guilty to the crime and told the police what had happened on the afternoon of April 20th, 1985. Wan stated that the group had headed to Braemar Hill to follow Pang to steal some copper wires from a government aerial station to sell for money. They were unsuccessful in stealing, and when they were heading back down, Pang spotted Kenneth and Nicola sitting on the grass with some textbooks. Pang decided to rob the couple, and everyone agreed with him. Once Pang had robbed the 2, he started to make snarky remarks on Nicola, provoking Kenneth. Pang had tried to grab Nicola and drag her away, but Kenneth and Nicola started to resist, angering Pang. Wan states that Pang was the one who ordered them to tie the couple up and beat them, and that killing them was also Pang's idea. Wan said that Pang threatened to beat anyone who wouldn't kill the couple, and this confirmed the 5 to be the murderers of Nicola and Kenneth. In 1987, Pang Sen-yi, Tam Si-foon, and Chu Wai-man were ruled as guilty on 2 accounts of murder and sentenced to the death penalty. However, the death penalty had not been executed in Hong Kong since the 1970s, and in 1992, the governor and the executive council pardoned the death sentences and changed the sentence to a life sentence in prison. In 2009, Pang Sen-yi passed away in prison of cancer. Because Xiong Yaohang and Wang Samlong were minors at the time of the murder, the judge was not legally allowed to sentence them to the death penalty, so they were sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. In 1997, Hong Kong was returned from British rule back to China, and with that, the laws had changed. A true sentence for the miners may take another 15 years, putting the families of the miners in great distress. But a surprising letter arrived from the UK in 1998. The letter was written by Ken's parents, stating that they had forgiven the two miners and that they had hoped to have them tried as soon as possible. They especially pleaded for Wan to be given a lighter sentence because he was the only one who pleaded guilty. Zheng Yaohang was sentenced to 35 years in prison, and Wan was sentenced to 27 years with vacation detections. As a result, Zheng was released from prison in September of 2008, and Wan was released in September of 2004. That's the.
Well, huh.
Everyone else is still in prison.
Isn't correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't At Her Majesty's Pleasure a thing in the UK where like they're basically just held until the Queen herself says
Yeah.
otherwise?
Yeah, basically.
You're just locked up for a dang.
Yeah, because they didn't know how to rule them because they were minors at the time. So the judge just said, "Oh, at Her Majesty's pleasure," and then that just basically put the families of the minors really worried because they like didn't know like what was happening. Does this mean a life sentence? Is this what? But they got released and they're living normal lives after that.
Huh.
In 2004,
Yeah. So one
when we were all born.
And I think Juan was 32 when he was released. 30 something. I don't really remember. But and then I was watching some of the news stories that came out at that time. They had interviewed Juan about the forgiveness of Ken's parents, and even he said he was like really surprised and that he really regretted what had happened. So yeah, I think.
Wow.
I really like criminal stories.
Hmm?
I really like criminal stories.
Yeah,
They
me
probably
too.
scare me the most.
And this was in 1985, right? So I think my dad was still in Hong Kong at that time.
Oh.
It's just kind of bizarre to think about.
Wow. Huh.
But I think the thing that surprised me the most was like Kenneth's parents forgiving him. They still wouldn't meet him, but it was kind of just like we forgive and this is in the past and like we have no point to hold on to any more anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean he was 16 at the time, right? Like he was 16. Yeah. I mean, and he was. I remember you said something about, was he in with the triads or was he just like a local like kid that was with somebody who was with the triads?
So I read that the three older ones who weren't minors were part of the triad, but the two minors weren't, and they had just been like picked up along the way by the three.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So,
because, yeah.
I mean, it's still horrific, but like he was 16 being like almost like he's being pressured by these older adults who are all, in with the triads. So I don't know if I would forgive him, but yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I would do that. I don't think I would, but that's just me. Like,
yeah. I think reading about like true crime stories, I've seen a lot of instances of like the parents forgiving the killers. At first I didn't understand how they could because I was really angry, right? That the victims were 17 and 18. Those are like prime times. They were happy and they got their lives taken away from them in a really horrific manner, right?
Yeah.
But I think at one point when the families think back on their children, it's definitely still saddening, but the anger that's there has already kind of been dispersed and they have to move on.
Yeah.
And it
really
also, it
res-
wasn't like they were meeting him and like shaking his hand or
Mhm,
anything. They're just
exactly.
like, whatever, we don't have any anger anymore.
I really respect that. It was,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
This is definitely a shortened version of the story. So
Hi guys, this is your second trigger warning. The upcoming story by Morgan may contain some triggers for suicide, sexual assault, and also general violence and gore. So if you would not like to listen to the story, please kindly skip to 1 hour and 13 minutes and 8 seconds. And then it'll cut straight to our discussion. Thank you.
All right, and then we have one more from Morgan. What you got for us?
Okay, so my story is based off of a fiction horror book. So I'm gonna just like make it short, but I didn't actually read this book. I just saw like I was like on YouTube looking at like what listening to like people read scary stuff, and then there was like this girl who was like, wrapping up the book. And it was like a really, really long thing, but I'm gonna make it shorter. But like I thought it was really cool. So it was written like it was a true story. So like it's supposed to be like kind of you're supposed to read it and like think it's a true story, but it is fiction. Just in case anyone's scared. And she changed the ending, and then I'm actually gonna change that ending as well. I didn't like any of the endings. I thought they were stupid. So I'm gonna
this
change
is
the ending.
this is
Also,
like
I forgot him.
customized.
Yeah, it's a customized story. And I didn't remember all the names, so I'm gonna make up some names too. So anyway, so the book was called The Patient, and so I'll just start off with that. So it's about a man who decided to become a psychiatrist. And he decided to become a psychiatrist because his mom was in a state-funded mental institution, and the state-funded mental institution was really run down, bad budget, overbooked, trashy, and he wanted to be a part of a state-funded mental institution and help people who needed help that couldn't get it because they had bad doctors, bad nurses, and the backstory of his mom. One day, he was just, asleep, and his dad walked in on his mom in the kitchen because his dad was hearing things in the kitchen. So his dad walked down to go check on the mom and saw that she had a kitchen, like a steak knife, and was carving into her arm and like ripping it apart. And she turned to the husband, and he was like, honey, are you all right? And she was like, the maggots have implanted voices into my ear, and the only way to get them and the screaming out is through my blood and my veins, so I'm trying to get the maggots out.
Oh,
So he was like, let's take her to the mental institution now. So he took her to a mental institution, and they kept her held there, and at the time the boy was 10, and I'm gonna call him Parker. He was 10, and the dad was like, "Oh, she's just visiting her mom. Oh, she's just on a girl's day. Like that's why she's gone." And finally, he was like, "You gotta tell me what's going on. Where's my mom? Okay, she's gone. You're not telling me the truth." So finally, he was like, "Fine, I'm gonna take you to your mom." He didn't tell him where his mom was. He just grabbed his little arm, shoved him in the car, and drove off to the mental asylum. And so, they pull up, and he's like, "What the is this place? Okay, like what? It's nasty." So they walk in, and it's like there are patients walking around, like looking at each other, and the nurses looked all mad and angry, and it looked like these nurses were like gonna make your case worse, like it was just a bad place. So the dad decided to stay outside and let the son meet his mom in a visiting room. So the son went into the room where the mom was, and he immediately was like a whiff of the smell, and the smell was just urine and blood, and it was disgusting. Okay, so he's looking around, he's confused because he's like, my mom's not here. And then he looked over into the corner, and there was his mom, all curled up in the corner, and she had a makeshift like shiv, and she was once again like carving at her arm and ripping it apart, and then like grabbing at it and at the cuts in the blood, and then she looks over and she notices the boy, but she registered that it was her son, and she looked at him and she was like, Parker, come help mommy get the maggots out. And then he was terrified and he looked at his mom. He was like, that's not my mom. You know, there's something wrong with her. And immediately, he's like, this is not my mom. And then she registers that he's looking scared. And so, she's injured herself. So she starts like crawling towards him and singing at him because she wants to comfort her son. So she's crawling towards him like, Parker, it's okay. Like, do you need a hug? And starts singing at him. And he's terrified. So he runs out of the room. And immediately he's like, that was not my mom. She needs help. No one's helping her. I need to become a psychiatrist so I can help people like my mom and people who aren't getting the help they need because of unfunded state institutions. What a smart 10-year-old. So they leave, and his mom passed away. So he never got to help like his mom or anything, but he went on to Ivy League schools, becoming a psychiatrist. He was like high-end, smart psychiatrist type stuff, And he had a fiance named Jocelyn, who was also getting a doctorate in something, I don't remember, but she was a smart little lady too, getting her PhD. So after he gets his stuff, he decides to apply for a state institution in Connecticut. And so he goes to that state institution, and then all of his friends are like, why would you do that? Like, that's nasty. I'm gonna get you to a real hospital because you're about to have some hellish working. Okay, like, you need to go to a real hospital. This is gonna be crap. You're an Ivy League psychiatrist. Go to a real hospital. I can get you in. And he was like, no. So he went to the state instituted hospital. And he walks in, and immediately it's the same type of thing. It wasn't too bad, It wasn't as bad as his mother's, but he was like, "Ugh," So it wasn't as bad as his mom's, but it was pretty. It was like, but that's okay. So he, everyone ends up really liking him because, he's Mr. Prodigy. Okay, he's just killing it up in this institution, but. So he starts to hear some stories about this patient named Joe. So some backstory on Joe. Joe has been in the mental asylum for over 2 decades, and he got there when he was 6 years old. And he's never been diagnosed. He doesn't have any doctors anymore. He can't have any roommates. No one talks to him. Only one nurse talks to him. Her name is Nessie. And she goes to give him his medicine, I think every Friday night. Maybe every day, every night, but it might just be every week. I don't know. I didn't read it. Anyway, so, no one's allowed to talk to Joe. He's not allowed to be assigned doctors or anything. Apparently, it is because every doctor he's ever had ended up killing themselves. Yeah. So, obviously, they're like, you know what? We can't diagnose him. We cannot cure him. We just need to sedate him. And that's all that can happen. Joe came in to the hospital at 6 because he was having night terrors. Really, really bad night terrors. So I'll go a little bit into the backstory of how Joe got in before we get to more deep into the story. So Joe gets there when he's 6. The parents take him in. They're like, he's having horrible night terrors. He is screaming all night. All night. We do not know what to do. There's something wrong. And so he, is brought into a room with a doctor and starts having a little therapy session. And the doctor's like, okay, so what is it? Like, what are you seeing with this whole night terror thing? And he was like, well, it's a giant monster. I'm in bed. It's just a giant monster above me staring at me. And it's like the head of like a worm with a million eyes, like a fly, and the body of a spider. And then immediately the doctor's like, okay, so this little boy is terrified of bugs. He has a phobia of bugs, and it's starting to come out. And he's getting night terrors from it. It's all in his mind. So he ends up telling the kid, giving this kid some, how do you say it? I don't know. He gives him some sedatives. Yeah.
Sedatives.
Okay, guys. Yeah. So he gives the kid some sedatives. And says, it's all your imagination. This is what's wrong. It's gonna be okay. You just need to like stand up to this monster. Okay? Like there's nothing wrong. So they send the boy home with the parents, and then he takes his little sleeping pills and he goes to bed. And the parents hear something in the night. It's like a little scream. And after that, it's silent completely.
Mhm.
And the parents are like, oh, he's probably standing up to the monster. He's standing up to it. Because on the way home, the kid was like, Mom, Dad, guess what? It's all in my head. Monster's gonna come out. I'm gonna tell it to get out. You're fake.
So
Like,
optimistic.
yeah, he's like, the doctor solved it. I know what to do. And he's all happy. And the parents are like, hell yeah, kid. You are okay. So then, the parents wake up in the morning and open the door. And you know what they see? Blood everywhere. Everywhere. And the kid is just sitting there like with blood all over his arms, torn up. And they're like, we're bringing you back. You are ill. So they bring the kid back. And they're like, what? And then bring him into a room after, like, of course, fixing his little wounds. And then he's like, well, I stood up to the monster and I didn't want to see it anymore. So I laid in bed and I covered my face like this. I was covering my face to hide from the monster. And then the spider claws ripped my arms apart and held open my eyelids to stare at it for the rest of the night. And they were like, we're admitting you.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he was like, so that's why I have cuts all over my arms, because it had like ripped my arm off of
Mhm.
my face and like held my eyelids open to stare. So they admitted him, and he went to bed that night, in the mental institution. And he never went back home because he was admitted for the 20 plus years. And the next morning, Joe wakes up and he's a completely different kid. Like, he won't speak, he's a mute now. And, nurses will come to try to talk to him, and he just hisses and clicks at them. He's like, he's just clicking and hissing at the nurses, and he won't speak.
Mhm.
And then he's like starting to get violent and like try to hit them. And there was a nurse who had a surgery on her shin, and he was trying his best to kick at her shin to injure her surgery that was healing. And then finally a nurse just picked him up and plopped him on the table. She was like, you've been a naughty boy. You can't be a naughty boy. And then suddenly he's a naughty boy. He took that and he was like, I am a bad person now. She told me I was bad. Now I'm a bad person. So he has them violent tendencies now, and he starts attacking people later. So Parker, is going into the hospital, hearing all these stories about Joe, about how he came in when he was 6, and all this. And no one talks about him. No one's allowed to talk about him. You can't even mention his name without people being like, shut up. You do not know what you're saying. Stop talking. He's dangerous. He's so dangerous. He's at the end of the hall where no patients are around, locked in his room all day. He can't be around other patients because he's so dangerous. But he is just like, short, skinny dude. Like 5'6". He's pretty skinny. He can't hurt anyone. But, they tend to say that his madness, he transfers some of his madness onto you if you're around him for too long. So Joe is getting more and more interested in this, and he's like, I can cure everything. he has this like cure all. He's got a little god complex. Okay, he's like very like I can do everything. I will heal the world. You
A
know,
lot of the
he's
characters you seem to like do have god complexes of fixing the world.
shut up, Jack.
Calling
Anyway,
Morgan out.
so yeah, he's just very like he's like a young doctor. He's doing this for help to help his mom. He wants to change things. He wants to change the world. He wants to help. He wants to diagnose Joe, cure him, and get him out of this asylum. Make sure he's like a respectable person. Help him because he needs it. So there's the main senior nurse, Nessie. She's the only person who interacts with Joe. And he's like, Nessie's like a pretty harsh person. Even the doctors respect her, come to her for advice. And if she knows what she's talking about, she's not any ordinary nurse. So, Nessie one day, apparently, like, she would braid her hair really tight if she was in a bad mood. And the looser it is, the better mood she's in. And she had a really loose braid. And she was eating a salad at a desk. And he waddles up to Nessie. He's like, "Hey, Nessie, what's up?" And she's like, "Hello, Mr. Prodigy. Take a seat." And he's like, "Hi, what is poppin'?" And she's like, "Oh, she's just talking." And he's like, "I was just thinking." Like, I had this, like, crazy idea. I was just thinking, what if I become Joe's doctor? And she's like, she went from, like, to, like, anger. Like, she was so mad. And he was shocked because, she's normally kind of mad, but this was the most mad he's ever seen her, ever. And she was like, "Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't you ever mention that name to me. You're so ignorant and naive. How dare you, Mr. like ego. You just came in here and you want to take on our like artist patient. You think you're all that. He is not allowed to have any doctors. You cannot have him."
What's she so angry for?
Yeah. And she was like, "You don't understand. I have to go in and give his medicine. Those 30 minutes I take to give him his medicine, every time I leave that room, I want to admit myself as a patient here immediately, just so I don't have to give him his medicine anymore."
Oh, yikes.
So he's like even more interested now. He's like, what is happening? Like, what is so wrong with him? So he sneaks down into the records room, signs in, and starts looking at Joe's records. So, little spoiler, there's the top doctor, her name's Rose, and she's like the director. And she took away most of Joe's files and hid them in her office and put just like a little sliver of like some bad stuff about his thing because like new doctors would always get interested in Joe, read the file, see how crazy it is, get scared, and decide not to take him on. But not Parker. He read this file and he was like, "This is the patient for me. I'm gonna take him on. I am elite." And so
Classic
here's a
main character energy.
for real. So here's a rest of Joe's story. So we leave off, with Joe about how he, turned crazy, like all crazy, mad. So the next couple years, he wasn't allowed not patients, wasn't allowed to have like roommates and stuff because like it would get pretty bad. The roommates, they'd always go kind of crazy. He was not allowed to have any roommates. And there was not a lot of files and notes during that time of like when he was 10, when he was 6 to 10. And so they gave him his own room. And then finally, budget cuts happen when he's 10. So, because like before that, there are Ivy League doctors at this hospital. The budget is great. It's a nice hospital. The budget cuts happen when he's 10. And they're like, "You know what? We need to give him a roommate. We don't have any more money for this." So, Parker's just reading this in this file, by the way. So, when he's 10, he gets put in a room with this really buff man, an adult buff man with violent and sadistic tendencies. He loved to see people in pain. And they put him with Parker, the 10-year-old, who had a tendency to try to push people's buttons. Joe talked to a doctor, and the doctor was trying to get to the bottom of things. And you know what what he said to the doctor? He was like, I don't want to talk to you. And the doctor was like, why? He was like, I don't talk to drunks. And the doctor was like, huh? And the kid was like, I don't talk to drunks. And the doctor was so confused. Like, how did he know that I was an alcoholic for so many years? Like, he had been sober for 2 years, but he had been an alcoholic all that time. Like, how did the kid know that? And immediately the doctor was like, I need to give this kid to someone else because I've never thought of taking a drink since I met this kid. Like, this stressed me out, and now I want to go back to drinking. So they ended up moving him on to another doctor. So obviously, this kid really knows how to push buttons, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So they put him in a roommate with a sadistic, violent, buff man. And you know what? Suddenly, like, the next morning, I can't remember if like the nurses hear screaming. I think they hear screaming. They go into the room and they see Joe, little 10-year-old Joe, beaten to a pulp on the ground.
No.
So, and then, you know, obviously they're like, okay, we need to switch roommates. So they switch roommates, 10-year-old Joe and a little 6-year-old boy who had PTSD because his dad was sexually assaulting him. So he had extreme PTSD. So they thought it would be good because, you know, Joe kept to himself a lot. This little 6-year-old boy kept to himself a lot. You know, they're the same age. They both can't really hurt each other. It'd be good. So, you know, they're actually really getting along. You know, nurses are watching over them. They're not fighting. They're not really talking. They're just like, oh, whatever. Like, oh, you know, he's he, I'm me, you know. And in the middle of the night, they hear screaming again. And they run to the room. And warning for everyone who's listening, trigger warning, this might be uncomfortable. Joe is sexually assaulting the 6-year-old boy the same way, exact way his dad did, furthering the boy's PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What?
Like, how did he know? So
I feel like I'm watching a movie, you know?
so they take Joe out immediately, you know, and they're like, we can't give him any roommates whatsoever. Doesn't matter how thin the budget gets, find the money. Keep this kid away from everybody. And that's all I remember. And I think that's all he read. So, oh no, there's more. So finally, no, they move him into another room, a different roommate after the 6-year-old. This poor 6-year-old. But yeah, they move him into another one. It's this really buff guy again. No, it was a teenager, like a teenager who was pretty buff as well, who could hold his own. Like if the 10-year-old tried to attack him, he could just like, you know, kill him, you know, like, you know, he could beat him up, you know, and be like, so Joe can't hurt him, you know. Joni said, no, like, you can't like mess with this boy. So, you know, he's a teenage meth addict. Okay. So this teenager, you know, I think it was like, you know, they've been in a roommate together for either a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and it was like, it was fine. But suddenly one night, you know, like what they were doing every night is they were strapping leather straps down on Joe and the boy because they didn't want them attacking each other at the night because the nurses couldn't watch them at the night. So they strapped them down in the bed every single night. And then one day, the next morning, they walked into the room and the teenage boy had chewed the leather straps out, escaped the bed, somehow got the iron bars off the window, and jumped out and killed himself. So they were like, Joe must have said something really bad to freak this kid out to the point where he killed himself by chewing his way out. So, you know, they're like, there's this officer, like, and they decided like, okay, so this officer, they're gonna have him stay the night with Joe with a tape recorder to see if Joe says anything really up to like scare the officer or anything. This guy can hold his own. He is ginormous, okay? Massively buff. Could step on this boy. So, he's sleeping in the bed. Of course, there's no leather restraints, but there's leather restraints for Joe.
Mhm.
So this man's like, I am not scared of this 10-year-old, comes with this tape recorder and lies down. And then suddenly, he comes running out of the room in the middle of the night, having a full-blown panic attack. Like this kid is saying, whispering, I don't like, and like, they're in a room and they're far apart. Like if he was whispering, it had to be pretty loud. So they listen to the tape recorder and they don't hear Joe whispering at all. They just hear Fred, the guard, have a panic attack and then running out. Like this man is having a full blown panic attack.
At this
And
point.
he's freaking out. He's like, and then they send him home. They're like, it's okay, Fred, you can go home. It's fine. So he goes home and, never heard of him again. But, like, as in, like, he never came back. He was like, screw that. But, so yeah, they were like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe all this information that, like, he's a crazy person got to Fred's head and he got a panic attack in the room. But we need to just never let this kid have roommates ever again because he's dangerous. And the file said nothing else. So he just wandered right back upstairs. And, he would go home and his fiance would be like, oh my God, like, what am I, chopped liver? And he'd be like, I'm thinking too much about this case. I'm like having trouble with this case. So acting like his case like it's a criminal case, but it's like such a patient. But anyway, so he goes back and he decides to talk to his boss, Bruce, to get Joe as a patient,
Mhm.
Oh wait, no. Right before he did that, he went back to work to like see, he just went back to work, whatever. And Nessie, the nurse who was giving Joe medicine, right?
Mhm.
He shows up to the hospital and there are police cars and ambulances everywhere. And they see a body being brought into the ambulance. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening? What's happening? Like, what happened? Did someone die?" And they're like, "Nessie is dead."
I
Nessie
knew
had
she would
given
die.
Nessie had given medicine to all the patients. Last patient was Joe. Then she walked on out, walked to the top of the building, jumped off and killed herself. So, he's like, I need to take this patient. Like, I need to take it now. But he couldn't mention Joe for a couple weeks because the police were like trying to figure out who did this. Was it like actually suicide or did a patient push her off? Like, what happened? So after that all died down, he decided to go to Bruce and ask for like Joe. He would be like, he's put on a letter. He was like, Nessie died, so like I'm here to pick up the slack. Here's a bunch of patients I can take on, and Joe was a name on there. So he gets the patient in, and Bruce is like, if you're lucky, I'm not gonna fire you right now because if you ever mention that name one more time, I'm gonna kill you. Okay, like you cannot take on Joe. And then Rose walks in, the director, and is like, get out. And then Bruce is like, looks back to the kid, and he's like, you're about to screw up everything. Like you were doing so good here. And then he walked out. And Parker's like, what the so, Rose was like, do you even know anything about Joe? Et cetera, et cetera. Do you even know anything? She was like, I was Joe's doctor. I survived. Thomas was Thomas was her boss before he left. He was like, Thomas was Joe's doctor. And he survived. And, we're lucky to tell you. She was like, I almost committed suicide. Okay. Like, you don't want Joe. And then finally she's like, whatever. Have you ever spoken to him? Why don't you go speak to him then? You can. Who's stopping you? You have a key to his door. Like, go ahead and take him on. But then she, of course, gives him the rest of the file. And the file is just like really weird. It has all the rest of the stuff. Pretty short. He was like, it's saying it's thick, but like there was no specific events that people talked about. There was a lot of diagnosis of like that he's a sociopath, and all this. So he goes to talk to Joe. He unlocks the door and he said it was very underwhelming. He expected to walk into the room, smell urine, smell blood, have blood on the walls, writing, scratches. But no, it was a very normal room with a frail looking man sitting at a desk. And he walked in and he said, "Hi, Joe." And Joe turned and said, "You're young." And he was like, "Well, is that like a bad thing?" Like, and then he was like, "No, but I mean, I guess you must have done something real bad to get here." And he was like, kind of weird because like it wasn't scary. It was just like, like Joe was making a joke about it, about how he knew that everyone was scared and no one was allowed near him. So he was kind of poking fun at Parker, like, "Wow, you must have done something bad to get here." Like she was like, and then she was like, "That curse word here." She said, "That bitch doesn't assign anyone here unless they've done something bad, and she wants to fire them."
Uh-huh.
And he was like, "Who?" And he was like, "That bitch, Rose." And they end up meeting for like a couple months. And he's just like, and then Joe's like a normal dude, He's not acting sociopathic. The way he reacts to things, like he's like, "I have trained for this. I can notice the smallest thing for sociopaths." And it's just not something, like he's just not showing any signs whatsoever. Like sociopaths can't fake these certain things. Like things like he had seen a lot of sociopaths, and if like during their talk, a bird flew and hit the window. And usually when it comes to sociopaths, they won't even notice that sort of thing, or they'll kind of just be like, "Bird," and move on. And he was like, that, like that that's how they should react. It's hard to fake empathy for a bird that just hit the window immediately like that. But Joe got up, looked down the window, and was like, "Where's the bird?" And it was like, looking for it, like out the window. He was like, "I hope it's okay." You know. So he gets it down. He's really confused. He's like, "How, like this guy, like I think he's being misdiagnosed." You know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe starts to say like, "Yeah, I'm not actually like anything they say. I feel like I'm just a revenue for money here because his parents were really wealthy and they were giving the hospital money for him. And that was their source of revenue." So he was like, "I think they're literally just keeping a sane person here for a source of revenue. You know, like I don't know why I'm here. I mean, I get it, you know." And then they were like, and like all these people are killing themselves, and he was like, "I'm not shocked by it. Like they always end up finding out that I'm sane, and then they like feel really guilty, and then they end up killing themselves." And of course, Joe, not Joe, Parker's like, "Whatever, like obviously like this must be a story." But at the same time, he starts telling stories about like a cat and about how he felt empathy for this cat, you know. So he's really confused about the story. Was like he was in a garden and he was talking about how his like parents didn't like him, and he was like, "Yeah, like I was in a garden and I really really like cats. I've always wanted a cat, and I saw this stray cat in the garden and I started to feed it every day. And the cat ended up coming back, and I used to read books with the cat and it would just stay near me. But one day, my dad came out, and my dad didn't like cats because he was allergic and he was really mean to me. So he came out, he saw the cat, and he drop kicked it into the woods. And I couldn't help but blame myself that I was the reason that cat got hurt, because I was the one who made it not scared of humans. It used to be so scared of humans, and I stopped that, so it's my fault. And then my
Yeah,
dad
drop
started
kick.
beating me in the garden, and my mom was like yelling at my dad, like, don't do this outside. The neighbors are gonna see." So he punched my mom in the face and gave her a black eye. And I noticed that after that, my mom kind of always blamed me for it, that it was my fault that my dad gave her a black eye. So she kind of blamed me for everything. So he made up that story, and I was like, how are you faking empathy towards a cat like that if you're a sociopath? How did he do that so well? And he's like, you know, kind of surprised. So, he ends up, after months of talking to Joe, he's like, "I'm going to break you out of here. You're sane. What the hospital is doing is messed up. I'm looking at these files. Nothing is specific. Suddenly, like, after having normal conversations with you in the files, Rose and Thomas were like, he's crazy, he's crazy, he's crazy." And without giving specific details, like, this is messed up. I need to break you out. So he's like, "I'm gonna break you out." So his plan was, "I'm gonna leave my coat in your room, and I'm gonna leave and pull the fire alarm, and all the patients are gonna evacuate, but you're gonna evacuate out the back and you're gonna run away." because, I'm giving you this map. It's in the code. So it comes to the plan of like when that's gonna happen, right? He's like, okay, it's gonna happen today. So he comes into the room with the coat, so he leaves the coat in the room, and then as he goes to leave, the door swings open, and there's a buff security guard. There's Rose, and then they're like, "What the hell were you trying to do?" And they grab him, and they drag him up to the office. And as he's getting dragged up to the office, he's screaming like, "You guys are fucked up! Like you're keeping a sane man here for money! Like this hospital is so messed up, and all this, yada yada yada." And he gets dragged up to the office. They throw him on the floor. And then in the office is Rose and the retired old officer, Dr. Thomas, the one who was his his doctor, and used to be Rose's boss. And they're like, "What were you trying to do?" And he was like, "I was breaking Joe out. Like you guys are messed up." He was like, "How did you find out? Were you guys spying on me? We was like a nurse spying on me when I was talking to Joe?" And they were like, "No, Parker. Joe told us." Joe requested to see Rose, and so Rose goes in to talk to Joe, and Joe tells Rose Parker's whole plan to break him out. So, obviously he's like confused. He's like, "Why would Joe do that?" And they're like, "Because he's not normal." And then he was like, "Please let me keep like talking to him. I want to see what happens." And then Rose is like, "Look, like this is like the story of Joe." And so of course, like a lot of like what they're saying, like he's not believing it. He's like, "What the hell?" And then Rose decides to tell a little story that makes up for the cat story. You know how he was like, how did he think of all this for a cat? How did he make up the empathy? It was based off a thing that happened with Rose. So Rose, Rose and him were really getting along. She decided to try this new hypotherapy, and it was like really great and working. And he was lovely to all the nurses, and everyone was getting along. And then she decided, I'm gonna give you a cat. I'm going to give you a cat, and if you can take care of this cat and it's healthy and it's nice and everything's okay for a week, you get to go and you get to hang out with other patients too.
No.
And then 6 days pass, and this cat is having the time of its life. He's treating this cat like a queen. It is a great cat. And she runs up to Dr. Thomas. She's like, "I am amazing. This cat worked out." So she skips off to the room and she goes to tell Joe, "You can go hang out with other patients." She walks in, she sees a dead cat on the floor,
No.
decapitated, blood everywhere, and then on the walls, written out in blood, and Joe's just sitting on the bed watching. On the wall, it's written out, "Nosy Rosie," in blood. And so when Rose was young, she was bullied a lot by her classmates using Nosy Rosie. So she saw and she was just like, she walked out of the room, went home, and was just devastated. And then she tried to kill herself.
The poor cat.
Yeah. So he's like, like Parker's just like, boom, like what the and so, he's like, I want to try one more thing. I want to figure this out. And what Joe was doing is he knew that Parker had this like save all thing, and if Joe is sane and can't be cured and can't be diagnosed, Parker's gonna be like, "What the heck? I can't save him. I can't diagnose him. The only way to save him is to help him escape." So we kind of make Parker like a little tung, 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 tung. And it was already getting into Parker's head because Parker started hearing this, his mother scream and cry for him, "Parker, Parker, Parker," in his head. And he was really confused because he started hearing his mother scream, and he was like, "This must be getting to my head." So he goes and visits Joe's parents. So he goes to the house, he visits the mom. The dad ended up passing away. So the mom's like, "Okay, like this is what happened." It kind of explains the whole story again, and I'm not going to get into it more detail because who cares. And he's like, "Can I go see the room?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, you can go see the room." So they walk up to the room, and he sees this amazing room. This is like, they're rich, okay? And this is the first room he got where he got to sleep alone in his own room, so he was really excited about it. So he sees the wall that he was talking about where the monster lived inside of it, and it's just this really big blank wall. And so he's, examining the room, and the mom is like, you know what, this room gives me a lot of anxiety and it makes me uncomfortable, so I'm gonna leave, but just call me if you need anything. So he's alone in the room, and he notices nothing weird, no signs of abuse or anything from the parents, because Rose and Thomas were like, well, we think he was getting sexually abused by his dad, and like all this stuff happened. And he's susceptible to like, if people tell him he's something, he becomes that thing. Like you're naughty, he becomes naughty. You're a monster, he becomes a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So he notices a little piece of the carpet is frayed up. So he peels it back, and there's blood. And he's like, what the heck? So he keeps peeling back the carpet, and there's more and more blood, and it gets to the wall. And then he just has this feeling, and he's like, he calls for the mom, and he's like, can I open this wall? And she's like, if you think it's gonna help my son, you can do whatever you want. So she hands him an axe. So he starts banging into the wall repeatedly, ripping open this wall. He rips open the wall. And you know what they see? Small little skeleton of a boy. And the mom starts screaming. So they call the police, and he rushes back to the hospital because they see the skeleton, and they're immediately like, that's Joe. That is Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So he rushes back to the hospital and runs into Joe's room. He opens the door, and Joe's just standing there staring at him like he knew everything that happened. Standing there like this, just with a crooked little smile, like really small. He's just like, and then he's so uneasy by it. He gets this feeling. He's like, I need to check on Jocelyn. I need to go check on Jocelyn right now at home. There's something not right. And he has this feeling. He's like, I have to go. So he runs out of the room. He doesn't say a word to Joe. He gets in his car and he drives home to Jocelyn. And she's fine. She's okay. And then he's ready to go back to the hospital when he gets a call that the first 2 floors of the hospital got flooded because of like a technological malfunction. The entire thing got flooded, and Joe escaped.
No.
And so, there were weird things. He couldn't get a hold of Rose for weeks. He couldn't talk to Thomas. No one was responding to him. They disappeared. And then one day, he gets a call from Jocelyn from a police station. She had been sexually assaulted outside of a library. And he rushes over, and and then he's freaking out because he's always been on edge. He thinks Joe's gonna come and hurt her, and he thinks Joe has something to do with that. So he's like, we need to move. And he moved to a different state. And Jocelyn is never the same after that. She quits getting her doctorate. She is just not the same. She's trying to stay at home all the time. She doesn't want to make friends, and they're at home. And then they get, they move into the new house and everything. And then he realizes Jocelyn just standing there and staring at him with a little crooked smile, exactly the same way Joe did. The end.
You're just gonna end it like that?
What?
This feels
What
like
was a body?
this
To be
feels like
honest, I did I just went off. I think I think I just chose the ending that the YouTuber chose that she made up, because I was just thinking, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna end this, because I had one in my mind but I forgot it, and it's just the end. So I was like, okay, that's the end. I was gonna change it and make it something a little more interesting, but that's the end now. So have fun with that.
Man. That's such a claim.
I know.
Totally see this as an entire movie, like how it's filmed, and
I'm so long though. I was like,
It's
can we do long stories? You guys however you want, and I was like, okay, I'll take the entire time.
you know that the story slowly I don't know. There were moments where like it turned into a comedy.
Oh yeah. I don't know, but like yeah, I wanted to like make it more lighthearted at the beginning, and say it like fun. But yeah, basically like honestly at the end like as like it progressed, I always start to tear up a little because I get sad like with the cat and everything.
We tear up at the cat.
But yeah, like
Nice.
so basically, oh, I forgot one part of the story about how how he named the cat. He was like, what was the cat's name? When like he was telling the story about in the garden, he was like, oh, it's like Figure-Doo or something. Like it was like a weird name. And then Rose was like, and he named the cat like Figure-Doo. So it was like the same thing, and he just made up the story. So yeah,
Oh my god.
but yeah, in the
Wild.
in the original book, the ending was that like he like the monster killed the boy at night and shoved him in the wall, brought him back
That's so
into the home because his
sad.
home was the wall, killed the boy, and then they shifted into the boy, and like that's how everything happened. And he was terrorizing and killing everybody by like making them crazy and making them kill themselves.
That's so sad.
Huh.
Yeah, that's how he knew everything about everyone and stuff. But I like to think of it more as like he's just because I like how it was more of a psychotic thing, and like he just like knows, and like everyone's really confused, and he's like a really good sociopath, and he's insane, and like it's like weird and like cliffhangery, and yeah. So I like to think of it as the body was not the boy but someone else, and Joe's the evil killer. And I don't know, I think it's more fun that way.
You know, when you were sharing the cat part, I was like, at this point, just throw the whole kid away.
Throw the whole kid away.
Just
Get rid of it.
send
Not
it
worth
back.
saving.
And like at the time with the cat, he was older now. He wasn't 10 his whole life because he's older now because he started at 6 and he was there for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
All fun and games. Oh my god,
all fun and
also
games.
I have a just
He was like late 20s or early 30s, but anyway, go on.
just a funny, I don't know. I don't know if it's funny or not. You know how he has
Let's
night
see how
terrors?
funny this can be.
You know how what is this, Joe? That's the
Yeah.
kid's name. Yeah. So Joe started off with night terrors, right? And then I was like, oh, maybe that's how I could have turned out. I had night terrors as a kid too.
You are
Ooh,
Joe.
okay.
Oh my god.
This
He
is
escaped.
Yo,
It's Hilary.
yo.
It was like, it was just a funny. Is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
a coincidence.
Anyway, I didn't change a lot of it because like I ended up like after I sped up, like my brain does not move fast enough to change it. I don't remember what the YouTuber was, and I would love to like figure it out so we could like credit it, but
It's okay.
If we find it, it'll be in the description on our YouTube.
yeah.
Yep.
So, all right.
Honestly, this is very useful.
Yeah.
Very 100%. Yeah. All
But
right.
it was
So, with the time that we have left, which should be a little bit of time, we didn't run for that long, and it felt late, but we did not. We should be around, I think, around an hour-ish. I think it's about the time we have. So I think we can go for another. We can go for a little bit more time.
Do you guys believe in ghosts?
do you believe in ghosts? Yes, I actually do. I didn't for the longest time, but so like I don't know why like recently, so like I keep like listening to like a YouTube channel about like and like paranormal stuff, and I'm like I'm always like whatever, ghosts aren't real, but like recently I'm like, why wouldn't they be real? Like I don't know, because how like in the past like people are like, well, the earth is flat, it can't be round. It's like, what if we just don't have the technology to figure things out yet, like why not believe in ghosts? And like with all the things that have happened, it's like, why not one of them be real? It could be possible.
Yeah, I honestly think that it could definitely be possible, but like
Yeah.
I just don't think that they're as like evil as
Yeah.
like movies portray them to be. Because you
Yeah.
know how people say like ghosts are just leftover brainwaves of like people who are alive.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I believe that, maybe there's still like some energy that like people leave behind, but like I don't think they're as.
They're like literal people.
Mhm. I don't think
And like even if they are, not all people are bad. Like why do ghosts suddenly it's like you become a ghost and you're an evil, horrible person? You know, what if it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
a nice ghost? Like why can't there be nice ghosts?
I
yeah.
mean, I'd be pretty upset if I actually no, that's a lie. I would not be upset if I was a ghost. If I was a ghost, I would do all the cool ghost stuff. Like
Yeah,
I
you
would
just get
haunt
to be an
people. That'd be
extra
hilarious.
human.
That'd be hilarious. But
You know
I
what
think
sucks
it
though is you're
very easily
alone.
could be real. Yeah, that might be one.
You're
Yeah.
alone. I mean, I feel like
No
I
one
keep trying to
convinced you.
communicate with people.
I mean, there's a
Maybe
whole
that's all the
ghost
ghost
community,
stuff.
right? Like, you have ghost friends.
Yeah, but I'm gonna miss people like I died and I don't get to see anymore. I'm just gonna be like, I hope y'all die. Wait, no.
No.
Just kidding.
What? They're taking a walk near the Grand Canyon and you're haunting them and you're just like,
Die.
no,
die,
we could
die.
hang out. We could be ghost buddies. You could be ghost buddies. You just like trip them or something.
That's so stuff.
It's terrible.
Well, like one thing that freaks me out, like what if I die and I become a ghost and I like die young, you know? And then like my friend dies old. Like what if they have like old body and I have young body and we have to stay like that forever and they're like a broken down little ghost and they can't do things that I can do because they're broken down and old.
I don't
Sorry,
think
old
physics
people.
applies to you when you're a ghost, man.
And it's weird because like now I'm best
don't
friends with an
really use
old
that.
girl.
Yeah, you just have to talk to an old person that vaguely remembers you from
Like
like
what if you're like married to
7
someone?
years ago.
Like what if you're married to someone and you're like in your 20s and like you die and then like your significant other lives till like really old and you're like young and old and I would just be like, this is kind of weird. But like, okay.
Then you get to look at them and be like,
I'm the
so I
prettier
really
one.
didn't have to be worried about them, huh?
Okay, but what if you like
So,
die and you like you like follow your like significant other around because you guys are married and then like they get with someone else and you're just sad.
bro, that's my villain origin story. That's my villain origin story. I would be like the ghost from like Ghost Adventures that's like, I think it's a demonic presence because it's like scratching people. That would be me if that happened to me. I'd be so mad. I'd be
like, how dare you get with someone else?
I would haunt them forever. It would be
why are y'all like
amazing.
this?
Dude.
But like, how dare they?
Excuse me, how dare they? How dare they?
Like, what if like we get married and we're like married? What if we're like middle-aged people and I die and they live to be really old, you know? And we've been together for years and years and years and they just get with someone else? Die!
It's like, oh, they want me to move on. No, I would not. I don't want you moving on.
You cannot move on. You have to.
I want you alone
forever.
or dead. Don't you try and cheat on me. I'm still here.
My picture, you best tuck a picture of me in bed every night. You know, you set it up for like.
If I do not have a shrine in your room, I do not want you anymore.
My used toothbrush must stay in the bathroom and you must look at it and be like, yes, I miss her so much.
Yo. Okay. So I guess whoever like is your spouse in the future needs to keep that in mind.
You better hope that I don't die first.
Once you're committed, you're committed.
You best be committed. If I was in middle age and my significant other died, I would not give it to anyone else because I've been with them for long. I would feel like I'm betraying them.
Yeah. Like,
wait,
that's
all the people. Wait, I feel bad because like, what if like someone who's like literally like their significant other died and they got with someone else and now they feel guilty.
Yeah, that's
whatever. I mean, not whatever. Sorry.
It's not a shame, but wouldn't let that happen to me though.
Yeah, like I would just feel, I don't know. I would, and plus like I'm never gonna love someone else as much. I've been with this person forever. Sorry.
No, what if you can have your own ghost love story though? Maybe once you die, that's your YN moment.
Okay, yeah, never mind. That's sick. That's sick.
Haven't you seen like okay, side note, I put my old glasses on right now. I forgot how bad my vision is. But anyway, what if like you know how like there's like those stories about like a ghost appearing in the mirror?
Like Bloody Mary?
Like what if, okay, but like your ghost appears in the mirror and you're like, oh my god, ghost. I would be like, I'd pop up and I'd like pop up to my husband. I'd be like, hi. And then like if he freaks out, then I'll kill him. I mean, just kidding.
Oh my god,
that's demonic. That is demonic.
Y'all are gonna get your own like movie if you do that.
A Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
A docu-series.
But like I mean I'm just gonna keep popping up and try to make him like not scared and like we can have a ghost love story. I'll just pop him in the mirror and just maybe come out and be like, hi, what's up? Got some dinner? It'd be
Is it
cute.
is it cheating if you possess somebody and then go on a date with your significant other, but you've possessed them? Is that cheating?
You have to get consent. You have to get consent first.
Yeah, like the
It's
like last
from
time.
who? From the person you're possessing?
Yeah, like you have to come up and be like, "Yo, can I just?"
When
borrow
has
your
a ghost ever popped up in front of someone's like, "Hi, can I possess you real quick?"
No,
Like, no,
it has to be.
they
Like,
just do it. What?
Yeah, I would just possess someone. I would just do it.
no, wouldn't you?
What if
wanna
you possess like Dwayne Johnson? That'd be so sick. That'd be
I
so
know, right?
possess The Rock. I would do so many things. That'd be hilarious. I would like punch a wall and be like, "Wow, I did not feel that. That's amazing."
Like if I'm gonna possess someone to go on a date, I'm just gonna possess someone. I'm gonna it's great. They get free dinner. Okay, they get free dinner, and then I just
Yeah.
let them back to their house, and they can have a like good little sleep, and they're like, and then they wake up and they're like, wow, why do I suddenly feel like I had a great meal last night? Because you did.
What if like you died alone, and then you would like possess the person that like your crush likes? I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you die alone and then you like someone, right? But the person you like already has another significant other, would you like possess that significant other just
So
to get like
we're
one
the messed
day?
up ones. That's
We're
weird.
the messed up one.
That's weird.
That's kind of that's yikes.
No, I'm just
Yikes.
Why don't you
I'm just
just
going along.
like you die alone and you're like your crush like never liked you and he's into someone else. So like why don't you just possess them
No,
and
no,
then
that
he'll love you?
I would never do that. I never said I would do that.
Mhm,
I am on.
mhm,
I'm just trying to
Hillary.
match
Mhm.
you guys, okay?
You're the
And
only
pose some
person who
questions.
that thought came to, Hillary. It seems
I
it's
would
okay.
never do
Wear
that.
it on your sleeve, all right?
I wouldn't do that because
You'll suck.
like I don't have a crush.
Oh.
So if you did, then it'd be a different story.
Yeah, but if you did, no, because you're dead already. Like you don't want to leave with regrets, right? I'm
I
not
feel
saying
like I
I
would
would
just
do it.
I mean, I guess I could just find like a really hot guy. Just kidding. Anyway,
A hot ghost.
like yeah. I mean, what like? Well, I mean, like I wouldn't. Okay, like I have a boyfriend, and if I
Uh-huh.
died and like he got with someone else, I wouldn't like possess her. I'd probably possess him to die, but I'd be
See,
Oh,
like,
you
how
gotta
dare
haunt the
you?
house. You gotta insidious that house. Wait, no, insidious is the other dimension one.
your
No,
boyfriend
sinister.
listening to this.
That's sinister.
I know, right? He listens to all of
You
them.
got The Conjuring. That's what it was. You got The Conjuring that house.
Yeah, sorry. At my boyfriend right now, because you're definitely gonna listen to this. If I died and I became a ghost and I saw you get with someone else, I would possess you, and I would possess you to kill yourself, and then we could be ghosts together, and then we could like haunt that girl because I hate her.
That is damn.
That is wow. That's respectable. I respect.
You're bold. You're being bold.
Maybe I'll cut that out.
Yo,
He's gonna be like, what the?
Cut it out and, like, send it
What if you
privately to your
possessed Jeff Bezos, and you just bought like a country or something?
Oh my god, I would totally possess a rich person just like for one day. Just let me
Yeah.
live that.
I possess like you possess like an artist that you've been waiting on them to like drop music forever, and just feel like I'm going into the archives. We're finally dropping this. Possess Kanye West to get him to drop Yachty.
I knew you were. Anyway,
You knew exactly where that
Yeah.
was going. You knew where that was going.
I knew it was gonna go to Kanye.
You possess. You have to possess a famous person and just have them do something really weird. Not something really bad, but really weird. So that's the only thing people will ever report about them, like ever again. Like, oh,
You're gonna
hey.
help make someone famous.
No, it'd be like, oh, hey, Mark Wahlberg cuts open the bottom of his water bottles and sips it like a cup instead of screwing open the cap. Like, that's the like
That's
just
so weird. I want to do that. I'm gonna do that.
exactly. I don't know where that thought came from. I don't know where it came from. Like, imagine how like blown away people would be to see like Mark Wahlberg in public, like cheersing people with an open water bottle with a bun of cut.
I would honestly probably hit him up right there, just be like, okay, let's get right now. I don't know.
You know what would be really fun to do though? Is
What?
play matchmaker with my living friends, or like this is my time. Like I'm gonna
You would
plan out.
would you possess somebody and like what would you do?
I don't know. I don't know.
Would you
what-
possess your friends to get them to say the right thing, or like would you possess the other person?
Oh yeah, I would totally.
But
possess
what
my
happens when you unpossess them?
I would totally like fix up their life a little, you know.
Let
Wouldn't
this
that
be
fun?
known to all of Hillary's friends. She would control your life and take your free will from you to make your life better in her eyes.
That's some like fascist type.
Yes, yes, it is.
It is not. My friends.
Hillary,
know.
that is exactly what you are saying. I hope you realize that we're half joking, but that's exactly what it sounds like.
My friends know that it's a joke. And anyways, if I choose the right person, I'll take requests.
It would
You know,
work
I'll
out
take
for it.
requests. My friends
It would work
can-
I'll write
out.
it down. They'll be like, Hillary, I know you're watching, please.
Yeah, they gotta pray to me, and I'll make it happen.
Burn all
Okay,
They're
but,
gone
like,
now.
You know how like ghosts, they can like go through walls and doors and stuff, and like they can like do whatever. You know what's low-key weird? What if like we literally have ghosts like all around? But like if you think about it, it's like, what if they want to take a shower? Like I don't know. I'm just thinking about that because like I was like, I'm gonna follow around someone for the rest of their life and like have some fun. But then I'm like, but taking a shower, I'll just have to sit outside and like waiting. But like I'm like, what if other ghosts just don't wait outside?
I mean, they can't wait outside of doors. They just walk through it.
Yeah, but like, what if
They
they
just
just stand? Like, what if they just chill outside? Because they're respectful. They're like, I will respect your privacy, but at the same time, they're like, whatever. I'm a ghost.
Nobody is
It's like-
going to stop you. Nobody.
It's like, don't.
Honestly, I don't know if he's cute.
Whoa, Hillary, choose your next
Oh,
words
no.
very, very carefully.
I'm cutting that out.
Yeah, I'm
No,
gonna cut
leave
that
it in.
out.
Leave it in. Leave
Nope.
it in.
This is exposing me. No.
You
I mean, if
exposed
he's
yourself,
cute.
Hillary.
I mean,
if he's cute, though, what the fuck?
I mean, if it's.
If it's my K-pop idol, then I guess.
No. We're not gonna make this about K-pop idols. That's weird. But basically, I was watching this anime when I was I was growing up. These magical girl animes, but like
Yeah.
this girl, she got two like ghost guardian angel type of stuff. It's so painful. And one's a guy, one's a girl, right? But the guy guardian angel fell in love with the human, but then the guy's partner actually still likes him. And then that's it. My entire heart shattered. Sorry. I don't know where that went, but
Not sure where that came from, but you know what? It's appreciated. You know what? It's appreciated.
Wait, I'm thinking about ghosts. What was it? I don't know.
but
like-
honestly,
Yeah, go on.
yeah, my friends could request like which guy they want, and then I'll make all the ends meet. Maybe I'll like, I don't know. It's fate. I don't know what, and then get them to meet or something like that.
Which is like, I would just do funny stuff to make people like slip on banana peels or something.
I got
Like
it.
just cause.
I would possess the teacher and put my friend and their crush in the same group.
I would possess my friend's t-shirts to like,
Give them all A's.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Like
that's
I'm
how you
everyone.
win.
I would give them some A's.
I would be the coolest ghost friend ever. I would just
Yeah.
hook people up with
Yeah.
all the stuff like, oh, hey, yo, let me just like levitate this like rich dude's wallet out of his pocket. Oh, there's
That's
his
so messed
credit
up.
card.
It's called eating the rich.
Whoops.
But like, yeah, I mean, I feel like,
Possess
if
the
I
rich.
hated someone, I feel like I'd try to make their life miserable. I mean, no, I wouldn't, but I would.
You wouldn't like for a while, but then like
know, I
after
just, like,
a
have
while
a
of
little bit of
looking at
fun
them,
with
you
it.
would.
Like, I would like, take their phone and hide it in a really weird place and have them get really frustrated. I would like hide their glasses, because when I can't have my glasses, because my siblings used to like literally take my glasses when like they were mad at me, and I would get so mad because I literally cannot see.
My glasses. I can't see without my glasses.
That's so evil.
So like
I
yeah, I
would-
feel like I just make their life like difficult.
I would take their phone out of like their pocket while they're sitting down or something and just like repeatedly enter the passwords that locks for the whole day.
Yes. So
That would
randomly
be
they
so
pull it up
funny.
and they're
That
like,
would be so
"How
funny.
did this happen?"
Then it enters so many passwords. No, I would change their passwords. I would like possess their phone and change their passwords.
Yes. It's like crack into it. You're a ghost, do whatever you want.
Yeah,
Can you
who's gonna
imagine
stop you?
haunting like a castle in like, I don't know, Europe, and like you're just having
Like
a
a-
party? Because there must
Like
be
a
a lot
Lep
of ghosts
Castle
there.
type beat?
There must
Yeah.
like just like grand brick and like you just party with the ghosts there. Wouldn't that be?
That'd be dope. That'd be dope. Yo,
Just imagining
I
that
want
right
to
now.
like find dead people, like dead people like I wanted to meet. Like
I
maybe
would
I'd probably
find
find my
Ronald Reagan
grandpa.
and beat him. Oh, we just went completely different directions. We just went like you went like, oh, I would find my grandpa. I would be like, yo, I would find Ronald Reagan and just beat him.
I would kind of wanna like I kind of want to find the serial killers that died, and be like,
Like the
yo, so
Zodiac
like
and stuff like.
you like even like Ted Bundy. Like I want to I want to just be like,
Talk to
so
him.
why? Like
Yeah.
just why? Like you can't hurt me because I'm like a ghost and you're a ghost too,
Yeah.
so you can't hurt me. But let's just figure this out, and maybe I'll scare you a little bit because I'm a little quirky.
Bundy's the
when you
epitome of
scared
kind of
Ted
quirky,
Bundy.
though. I don't know. You gotta like that would be interesting. I would
I
would
wanna talk to
solve
someone.
mysteries from like beyond the grave. I'd be like, yo, who is Jack the Ripper? Who really
my
was
God.
Zodiac? Who was
You're
Zodiac?
right.
I would solve mysteries and then write it down like possessing a detective's like body. That'd be sick.
You're
Like,
right.
I
'Cause, like,
I would
no
solve
one's
Zodiac or
ever gonna
something.
know these people, like who they are.
Yeah. So you just possess from like beyond the grave or something, dude. That'd be a great buddy cop show. That definitely exists already. Like 100%, it already exists. Like where like it's a ghost and like a person, and they're like cops, and they're like solve mysteries. That has to exist. There's no way it doesn't.
This is good. We're coming up with like movie plots, y'all.
That'd be sick. That'd be dope. But like, I would definitely solve like the Zodiac or like Flight 370 or something. I would solve all the mysteries and stuff like that. Like
Oh my god.
what? Like
The
nobody
flight.
would ever know without you. Like, why has a ghost not done this before? I'm upset at them. I'll fight them. I'll fight them beyond the grave.
I always wonder if there's some like ghost rules, because like you know how you joke with family like, oh, if I die I'll visit you in your dreams, but like yeah, that doesn't really ever happen. Maybe there's like rules to how people communicate.
Like a Coco type thing where it's like you can only come like one day a year or something, or like what you like? You mean like
Maybe, I don't
rules
know.
or like
But there must be rules, or else like this world would probably wreak havoc.
if there are no rules for me as a ghost, I would do a lot of hilarious
Oh
stuff.
no, we've already
I would do a
talked about
lot
this.
of hilarious.
Don't
stuff.
let Jack.
That would be so
Anarchy.
fun. That would be so funny. I would levitate like a brick off of like something important, and just like a swimming pool just like floods all over a deck. I don't know what it is about swimming pools being drained as like property. That's so funny, but it's so funny. It's so funny for
What
no
is
reason.
that is an oddly specific like.
It's so like because there's so much water, and it's not even like from a river or something. It's just from a pool. It doesn't make sense, but it's funny. I don't know. I would like to do stuff as a ghost. Like that would be fun to do stuff that you just could not possibly do. Like I would do trickster stuff that wouldn't like hurt anybody, but would just be really funny. Like I would
Oh yeah.
I would constantly untie somebody's shoes to the point that you just can't tie them anymore. Like you just have to accept it. But then I would leave, and then they would be so unsure if they could tie their shoes or not. They just never would, even though I'm not even there anymore.
Do you?
I don't know
think
how that would make sense, but that'd be funny.
I just got a thought pop up in my head. Do you think we can meet gods, like plural, like I don't know, like the Greek gods, or like when we're ghosts? That'd be the coolest shit ever.
Don't they like, speaking in theory, don't they have like their own like planes of existence that are not this one?
Or maybe as a
I'm not
ghost,
gonna
you
I'm
could
not
just
gonna roll. I don't know. Like I wouldn't roll up
I
and
don't
see
know how
on the
this
corner
works.
just like Jesus just like sitting on the corner, just like, hey, what's good, man? Or like just roll around the corner and just see Zeus just like posted up and like Louis Vuitton or something. No. Like I wouldn't see that. I don't know. Like
Yeah, I
maybe
feel like-
maybe you
Right.
can travel between planes.
I would have to
Yeah.
go to like, what is it, Olympus? Is that where? I don't know.
Yeah, Mount Olympus.
Mount
yeah,
Olympus, yeah, to see the gods, right?
right.
If I
Just
could
kind of
see
roll up
that.
like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, that would be super freaking cool.
Yeah. I don't even know what I would do. I'd probably be like, lightning bolt me.
Yo, try and lightning bolt me and see what happens, bro. See what happens. Nothing happened. I would bait that dude.
My mind went
nothing
in an
happens.
entirely different way.
Yo,
What?
Hillary, you gotta chill.
Hilary, I
you gotta
see.
chill. I saw that expression. You gotta chill.
No,
You gotta chill. Yo, we're
What
gonna
was your
move
going
on
to?
now.
What? I'm curious. I'm curious.
No,
What are you
no,
thinking?
we're not doing
Hilary?
this right now. Hillary, it is
So fanfic?
not even 5 o'clock. It is not even 5 o'clock yet.
Wattpad?
Not that time.
like
We are moving
I don't
on.
know. Play around, fall in love with a god, become like another god. There you go.
Sure, that's the direction you were going. All right, yeah.
It
yeah.
was. That's like purely
Mm.
just that.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. We believe
I
you.
know what you're thinking. My mind never went there until you were like,
Hillary, we saw your expression. We know that's exactly where we know that's where your thoughts went. You gotta
Hillary,
chill.
Hilary X Poseidon?
Don't say that. Don't say
Wattpad
that.
fanfic?
what did she say?
I said Hilary X.
Hillary
Zeus.
X Poseidon.
No, not Poseidon.
No.
Not Poseidon. I like Poseidon.
So, Hillary, you said that like, oh, not Poseidon, but
Like, please don't know.
But oh man, I don't know.
moving on. We're gonna
Apologies? Okay,
move
and
on.
moving on.
Yo, let's move on from here. Let's move on. This is about to get to a conversation that none of us wants to have.
Cut
Let's
this out
just
later,
move on
please.
right
Thank you.
now.
Great.
We will just no,
Moving on.
you can't escape this. We caught you in 4K. We're just gonna move on from here. Pretend that did not happen, but that has to stay. All right. So I think we've gone on for a while. Do you want to start wrapping it up or?
Yeah, I think they're done
one-
listening to us.
Talk about
This went a
This
very
stuff.
different direction than our Nightmare on Christmas,
Yeah.
for Christmas theme. But you know what? Whatever.
I really
we went with
tried
it.
making this creepy, but I think it turned into comedy at the end.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean, I feel
we
like our
we
stories
can't
do-
keep serious for too long.
I think our stories are spooky. Ish.
We hope you like them.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I think we just could not keep that serious between that long. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming out to Sincerely Strangers. We're gonna wrap up here and we'll roll the outro in just a second. Thank you for coming, and you can join us next week for our extra special Christmas episode with all 4 of us.
Yay.
So now everyone say bye. We'll see you next week.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.
Cue the outro that I will probably record tonight or tomorrow. All right.
Cut.
Yay.
Oh, all right. Thank you all for listening today. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment topic suggestions. Follow us on Instagram at Sincerely Strangers and tune in next week for our Christmas special with all 4 of us. We have a lot of special things planned. See you next time. Sincerely, Strangers.